And now what's really cool is we look at kind of applying it in business. So Dale, he's got this one student who's really, really cool. And he's part of G. Dunvery and Dunroy and Sons, a baking firm in New York. And Mr. Dunvery had been trying to sell bread to this one New York hotel for a very, very, very long time. And basically he sold industrial bread. And so he would give tons of bread. And he's at his bakery and he's making tons and tons of bread all the time. And he's always trying to sell it to this one hotel. But he just can't do it. And he's called on this manager every single week, 52 weeks a year for 4 years. I mean, can you imagine, every single time? He went to the same social affairs. He went to the same events that the manager attended. And he even took rooms in the hotel and lived there in order to get the business. Now, this was a big client, right? So this made sense. He should put this dedication, because if he gets this gig, if he gets this job with the hotel, I mean, that's a lot of bread, right? And so this is a big thing for him, and it's something that he's focusing on, which makes total sense. But he just isn't able to connect with the manager. And so because he can't connect with the manager, he can be at his bakery all day, but he's not going to sell any bread to this guy, which is just insane, right? And so after studying human relations and understanding these tactics, he decided to find out what actually interested this guy. What made him enthusiastic? Because he'd been trying all these hotel things to get in front of him, and he'd been trying, staying in the room or going to the hotel conferences or, doing things around the hotel that help the hotel, but maybe didn't necessarily help the manager. So instead of being passionate about the business, he's got to be passionate about the person who's sort of the gatekeeper, right? And so that's what he does. He starts to learn, and he discovers that he belonged to a society of hotel executives called the Hotel Greeters of America. And not only did he belong to the society, but he was so bubblingly enthusiastic that they made him president of the organization and president of the International Greeter. And no matter where its conventions were held, he would be there. So when he saw him the next day, instead of talking about, bread, or instead of talking about, staying in the hotel, he talked about what? He said, hey, talking about the greeters, the international greeters. And what a response he got. He talked to him for almost half an hour about the greeters. And his tones, they were so vibrant, so enthusiastic. And he could plainly see that this society was not only his hobby, but it was the passion of his life. And not once in the past 4 years had this guy ever stopped for a moment and said, hey, what are you passionate about? Instead, he just assumed, he's a hotel manager. He must be passionate about hotels. He never took the 10 seconds it takes to say, what are you passionate about? And the moment that you learned what this guy was passionate about, he was rambling on for hours and hours just to talk to him, right? In his office, right? And so as he leaves his office, before he left his office, this guy says that he actually sold him a member into his hotel organization. And so he became so genuinely interested in this guy that he actually joined his organization and just got to that really, really deep level of connection with him, which is super, super, super cool. And in the meantime, this guy says absolutely nothing about his bakery, about making bread. He doesn't say anything, but a few days later, the steward of the hotel phones him to come over with samples and prices. He didn't know what he did, but this stewardess, as she called him, she said that he is so sold on him. Why? Is it because the bread suddenly got better? No. It's because this baker had an interest in the manager, and that interest led to an insane amount of added value to his life, right? It made him feel really, really, really significant, really, really important. It let him express his passion to somebody else who was a willing listener. And because of that, he wanted to reciprocate by buying a bunch of bread from this guy, right? Getting the business that he wasn't able to get for 4 years, pounding against a brick wall. Took him 2-3 days by just making a quantum leap over it by focusing on the connection with other people that he could have, which is so powerful. 4 years, he was unable to do it, but just by taking the trouble to figure out what he was interested in and what he enjoyed talking about, he was able to absolutely crush it, which is so ridiculously powerful. And there's this one more example. It is so huge. I think it's just so cool. There was this guy, his name was Edward Harrisman, and he chose to live in this big valley after he completed military service. But unfortunately, at the time, there were very, kind of few jobs in the area. And so a little research uncovered that the number of the companies in the area were either owned or controlled by an unusual business maverick named R.J. Funkerhauser. So of all the businesses that were in this little town that this ex-military guy wanted to, start a career at, everything was kind of owned by this one guy who had risen from poverty to riches. And that kind of intrigued this guy. He was like, wow, this guy used to be really, really poor. Now he owns like the whole town. That's pretty cool. Instead of being kind of like everybody else who was just looking for jobs, he wrote a letter. And he writes that like he interviewed so many people. And he found his major interest was anchored in the drive for power and money. So this guy, he was interested in power and money, because when he grew up without power, he grew up without money, and so he grew up sort of in a lacking environment. He wasn't really connected with these fundamental elements of his life, right? And that's sort of what he cares about. And he learns that. He says, wow, he cares about power and money, since he protected himself from people like me, like this worker, by using a dedicated and stern secretary. And he also studied her interests. He studied the goals of the secretary, right? So because this guy had a really, really, really stern secretary, he goes and he studies the secretary, and he tries to get interested in this secretary and figures out what the secretary likes, right? Because the secretary is the gatekeeper to this guy, right? And so he studies and trying to figure out what her goals are, what her interests are. These two are really, really, really powerful things. If you can figure out what somebody's goals are, if you can figure out what somebody's interests are, if you guys went through the Think and Grow Rich course, that idea of having a really, really strong overarching long-term goal. If somebody has an overarching long-term goal and you could talk to them about that goal, you can talk to them about what they're interested in, that's a really, really great way to build a strong bond, a strong connection, a strong relationship between yourself and other people. And so that's exactly what he does. And apparently she'd been this guy, Mr. Funkerhauser's secretary, for about 15 years, which is really, 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 really cool, right? And so when he told her he had a proposition that might translate himself into financial and political success. Remember, he cares about power and he cares about money. So we have financial success and political success. Because she knew him so well, she became enthused, and he convinced her to become a part of this success. And after this conversation, she arranged for him to meet this guy who owned like the whole town, right? And it's so cool because like he wants a job, right? But he doesn't go to the secretary and say, hey, I want a job. Instead, he looks at the goals and he looks at the interests of the secretary, which are aligned with the goals and interests of Mr. Funkerhauser. And he focuses on like what he wants, right? What the secretary wants, focuses on what they want, and he tries to give it to them. So he enters this huge office with this guy, and he walks in, and he is like super excited because he didn't just walk in, demanding to ask for a job, but instead he was able to sort of restrict himself, sit behind this big desk. And at first this guy's like, what about it, young man? What do you want? And so he says, hey, Mr. Funkerhauser, I believe I can make money for you. And so he immediately rises up in his chair. And he's like super excited. He says, okay, well, come and sit down, sit in one of these big upholstery chairs and let's talk. And then he just sits down and he talks about some of his ideas and some of his qualifications that would allow him to sort of achieve these ideas, as well as how they would contribute to his personal success in business, right? How would this actually make money for this guy, right? And so he talks about all these plans he has to make him a bunch of money. And he's like, hey, this is how I'm going to make you a bunch of money. And so RJ, as he became known to him, hired him at once. And for over 20 years, he's grown in his enterprises, and they've both had massive prosperity and made tons and tons of money together. Why, right? This is what's like so few people do. He came in with a plan on how he was going to make money. And if you come to somebody with a plan on how you're going to make the money, like it's so much easier for them to say, yeah, you bet, I'll hire you right now. And that's exactly what happened, right? He didn't walk in and say, hey, I want a job. He walked in and said, hey, I want to execute this plan on how I'm going to make you money. And if you can just take like the 10, 20, 30 minutes it took him maybe to think this thing up, and then put it on paper, and then sort of talk about it in terms of other people's interests, all of a sudden, it is so much easier to connect with both parties. Howard Hurst, the leader in the field of employment communication, always followed this principle. When he, asked what reward he got from it, this guy, he would respond that, not only would they receive a different reward from each person, but that in general the reward had been an enlargement of his life and time each time he spoke to somebody. So like all you have to do, right, is focus on other people's interests and talk about what they're passionate about, talk about what they care about, and you're gonna not only have a reward in your life immediately by having a better relationship and a better connection with somebody, but kind of more significantly, like you're gonna be able to get to this end goal that they desire so much easier by focusing on what they really care about. And it totally changes everything, because you're able now to sort of shift away yourself, which nobody cares about, and focus on what people love to talk about, what they really care about, and that of course is their own interests. And like, oh my god, it's so powerful, and you'll have such a huge reward the moment that you can start to talk in terms of what other people like and what other people care about, what other people are passionate about, and just talk in terms of the other person's interests. If you do that, like, it changes everything, and it's so powerful. So I mean, it's huge. So give it a try, give it a shot, and it will totally change your personal and professional relationships and allow you to be an insane conversationalist anywhere you go, and like just never run out of things to connect people about, because people will dive infinitely deep into the things that they're passionate about, the things they care about. And the moment they do that, I mean, everything changes, and it's just insanely powerful. So thank you guys so much. Hope you got a ton of value from this module. Go out there, apply it, absolutely crush it, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.